What's up, guys? Welcome to another video on our free CSS course series here. Today we're going to be talking about how to position elements with Flexbox or Flexible Box or whatever you want to call it. But this is a CSS feature that got built into CSS about 8 or 9 years ago. And it allows us to easily position elements next to each other or above each other or however we want them, without using outdated technologies like CSS floats or tables or any of that nonsense that people used to have to use back in the day. So CSS Flexbox, I remember when this first came out, it was a huge game changer because it made laying out pages and certain elements 10 times easier than it used to be. So how Flexbox works is you put it whatever you want to be flexed or next to each other or whatever, you just put it in a container. So like you just put a div around whatever ever divs you want, and then that'll be your flex container. And then you just use the CSS property display flex. So as you can see in here, you just hit display flex, and then instead of going side by side, they're now next to each other. So if we take away this display flex, see what happens. Now they're just regular block elements, but that display flex puts stuff side by side. Okay, so that's the bare bones basics of how Flexbox works. And there's other properties that you can add to further style stuff, which I'm going to show you right now. And yeah, this just, like I said, Flexbox makes making page layouts 10 times easier. You're going to love it. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this stuff. And I'm going to go into my CSS course code here in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to make a new lesson here. We'll call this 12 flexbox.html. Okay, and I encourage you to follow along with me in your own text editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code, so try to code along with me here and try to get some of this in your brain. So we're going to name our document CSS Flexbox. And I'm going to put all of the styles for our document up in the head below my title for this lesson. And we're going to make some HTML to start. So let's go ahead and we will make a flex container. We'll just make a div with the class of flex container. Oops. So let's call this flex container. And then we'll make a div with an ID of, we'll call it, well, actually, we'll just put a class on it. We don't need an ID. We'll just say div.box. Okay. And then I'm going to give it an H2, and I'm going to say, call this one Flexbox1. And then we'll put we'll put a paragraph with about 30 words of lorem ipsum placeholder text. And let's go ahead and see what we have here. I'm going to go live using the Visual Studio Code live server extension. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Let's go ahead and add a few more boxes here. So I'm going to add 3 more. Say this is Flexbox 2, Flexbox 3, and we'll say Flexbox 4. Okay. And now we'll go ahead and add some styling to the page, and we'll get into Flexbox. So I'm going to do a CSS reset by selecting everything with the asterisk symbol. And I'm going to say I want margin 0, padding 0, and box size and border box. If you don't know what that is or what a CSS reset is, go check out my video on CSS resets. It's in the same playlist that you're watching now. And then let's go ahead and we'll give some styling to our boxes. So we'll say dot box, and we'll give them a background color, and we'll give it like an off-white or kind of like a grayish color. There we go. And we'll give them a border of 1 pixel, solid, and black. And then we'll give them we'll give the content some padding within the box of 20 pixels. Okay, looking better. And then we'll give them some margin bottom of 1 rem, which equals 16 pixels. 1 rem is 16 pixels. So now that's looking a lot better. They're spread out. Okay, so it looks good. Let's actually do 1 rem all around. 1 rem, 0 rem, so that they're not so far up close. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so we have our boxes. And now what we'll do now is I'll go ahead and I will show you the magic of Flexbox, okay? So see, we have this div that is, and all the other divs are inside it, and we're calling that our Flex container. We'll go ahead and we can use Flexbox to actually make those go side by side if we want. So let's select it by saying Flex containers, selecting the class Flex container with that little dot. And I'm going to give this a max width, first of all, of 960 pixels. And then I'm just going to give it some margin so that it's centered within the page. Okay, so let's see how that looks full screen. There we go, that looks better. So we're looking better and better by adding some styles. And then we're going to go ahead and do display flex, see what happens. Whoa, there they are. So now they're next to each other because we displayed them flex. And I made that container class have a max width of 960 pixels. And then I put margin auto so that everything's kind of in the middle, just to make it look more presentable, okay? So those are flexed items. And what we can do with those flexed items now is we can also align them center. So we can say align item center. And it makes sure that it'll make sure that your items are aligned center horizontally or along the x-axis. And then justify content center, it just makes them so they're in the center. That's not really going to do much now because we already used the margin on it, but I'll show you how it'll affect other elements in a second. I'm going to give them a padding of 3 rem just to bring everything in a little bit more. And then I'll give a background color of blue. So along with that padding of 3 rem on our flex container and the background color, I'm just demonstrating to you what that's our flex container, and then within our flex container, which is the blue one, we have our flexed items next to each other, okay? And then if we wanted to space those flex items out since they're all together, we could actually make a so if we wanted to give some space in between our flex items, see how they're all stuck together, we could do that by using a property called gap. And we could just say like 1 rem. Okay, so now there's 16 pixels of gap in between them. You can also do that by adding padding to each individual one if you wanted to, but that's the easier way, is just to use the gap property. You can also do some other things with Flexbox. So you could do stuff like you can use what's called flex direction, and you can do row reverse. So now box number 4 is first, then 3, then 2, then 1. You can make your Flexbox items stack on top of each other by changing the flex direction to column. And this is what you'll use a lot when we're doing mobile stuff. When we're editing a page to make it mobile responsive on cell phones, you'll be changing your flex items to flex direction column. That's how I do it. And then it just stacks them on top of each other. It's super easy. And then with column, you can also do, just like row reverse, you can do column reverse. And believe it or not, that's actually used a lot because a lot of designs, when they get to the mobile one, the image might be on top and then there might be text on the bottom on the desktop version of a design. But a lot of times in the mobile version, that's actually flipped around, and that's where column reverse comes in big handy because you can like flip where your stuff is positioned. So that's the basics of Flexbox, guys, and when you're going to use it and how you can give gap in between them, stack them on top of each other, and do everything fun. So I guess let me go ahead and I'll leave this stuff up here for you guys so that if you look at the code or write your own, I'll just comment it out for now. So that was our column, flex direction, column reverse. Just comment that out, and that way it'll be in the code and you'll have notes on it. Flex direction, flex direction, row reverse, that reverses the order, okay? So I'll just comment that out for now. So what I want to do now is we'll build something that's a little more practical. This is just kind of messing around with boxes, but I'll show you how Flexbox can make it really easy to make a navigation. I'm not going to make the navigation super pretty, but I'm going to build just like a basic little navigation for you guys using Flexbox. At least this is how I do it. Keep in mind, guys, that everything I'm showing you, these are just the basics of Flexbox, and everything I'm showing you in this course is the basics. And the thing about coding, especially in the front end, is it's kind of like an art form, meaning that there's many ways to do stuff with different pieces of code that all do the same thing. So this is just my way and style of doing it. As you become a more experienced developer, you'll probably develop your own little workflows and ways that you like to do stuff, which is fine. But this is just my way, okay? So I'm making a header tag here to be semantic. I'm making a nav bar within my header. And we're going to make an unordered list with some list items because, as we know, that's what makes up navigation. So I'm going to make this one home. And we're going to see our nav stuff pop up here. So that's home. Let's copy this down 3 more times. Say about. We'll say this will be a blog page. And we'll say contact for this one. Okay. And then see we have one unordered list here. I'm going to copy this and bring in another unordered list. And this one is just going to have 2 items in it. We'll pretend that there's maybe there's a shop on this website. So we'll add shop. And then we'll add join newsletter. Maybe there's a join newsletter button. That's pretty common nowadays on websites. So this is what our nav bar looks like so far. Nothing different. Everything's stacked on top of each other because ULs are block elements by default. But now what we're going to do now is we'll go up here to the, and we'll grab our nav bar. So we'll say nav, just by grabbing it by its HTML tag. We'll say display flex. Okay, so now see how our 2 different ULs went side by side because there's 2 ULs and nested in them as links. So when I did flex, it put the UL side by side. It flexed them, okay? So that's what's happening there. So bear with me. We'll go back up. We'll say align items center. Now they're centered horizontally. See how it came down here? We'll say justify content center. Okay. Now everything's in dead center. And now what we can do is we'll select our UL, our unordered list items, and then we'll also display those flex. And now everything's side by side. Now it's all just kind of crammed together because we did justify content center. So we'll do align items center. And now this time on these ones, we're going to do justify content space between. And we'll see what that does here. Oh, hang on, guys, I messed up. 1 second. We'll get rid of this justify content center. And we're actually going to put our, sorry about that, we're going to put our justify content space between is going to go on our nav because we want to separate those 2 navs because most websites, they have, they'll have maybe one part of the nav bar here or a logo. A lot of times it's a logo over here and then the nav bar here. Or they'll have 2 separate nav bars on a lot of modern websites, and that's how you do it with Flexbox. So we made our nav, we displayed them flex, our 2 unordered lists, made them centered, and then we said space between instead of center. So center brought everything into the center, space between. That means I want both of these flex items as far apart as they can possibly be. That's what space between will do. There's also space evenly. And that'll space them out, but it's not going to force them all the way to the other sides. It'll just give them a little bit of space. But most of the time, you're going to be using space between when you're making a nav bar like that. So I'll put that to space between. And then we'll make these, you don't really need, we'll just justify content center on this one for our ULs. There we go. And then our links look kind of ugly, so I'm going to just say select all of my list items. And I'm going to say list style, none. Get rid of those bullet points. And then I'm going to select I'm going to say list item, anchor tags within all of our list items. I'm going to give them margin of 1 rem all around. And now we have more of a nav bar. Okay, so it doesn't look pretty. I'm not going to style it up much beyond this point, but that's how nav bars are made, guys, with Flexbox. And most modern nav bars, people are going to use Flexbox for them, and that's how they are. So I guess we could, if we wanted to, we could give our nav some margin on the top. Just bring it down. Probably look a little bit better. There we go. That's a little better. But yeah, that's like a modern nav bar with Flexbox and a little bit of CSS. So our links don't work or anything, but that's how it's done with Flexbox. And then it's really easy with Flexbox, like I said, to make stuff mobile responsive. You can just stack them. You can just say flex direction and stack them if you wanted to. I'm not going to get into mobile and media queries right now, but it would be as easy as just turning this flex container right here for items as flex direction column, and they would just stack on top of each other, and then you'd have a mobile view with like one little line of code, which used to take several. So, but yeah, that's how Flexbox works. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.